Well. They can't stop talking about you. The rumors are spreading faster than reason can catch them. There's no way they're human, someone says. It's not possible to think like that, react like that, move like that. You've become the unsolvable equation in their minds, the outlier that rewrote what they believed was possible for ordinary people. Every time you predict an outcome before it happens, every time you anticipate a move before it's made, they whisper theories in hushed voices. Maybe they're from the future. Maybe they're built different. They don't realize what they're really saying. It's not that you're unnatural. It's that you've evolved beyond their understanding of what natural is. Right now, someone's pacing the floor, replaying your last conversation in their head, trying to figure out how you read them so easily. They thought they were subtle. They thought their manipulation was invisible. But you saw the pattern before it even began, like reading code in motion. That's what terrifies them. Not that you're smarter, but that your awareness bypasses logic altogether. You don't need to think 10 steps ahead. You feel 10 steps ahead. While they're still processing information, you're already adjusting your reality. They call it supernatural, but what it really is hyper-real. The product of observation sharpened into instinct, instinct upgraded into intelligence, and intelligence fused with precision. They've started comparing notes about you. People who don't even talk anymore suddenly have something in common. Confusion. They've realized their old tricks, the emotional manipulation, the performative kindness, the social posturing. None of it lands on you. You see through the filters and into the intention. It's like you're operating with a different kind of vision, not the kind that depends on eyes, but the kind that depends on perception. You don't watch the show. You analyze the lighting. You don't hear the dialogue. You detect the tone beneath it. You've become the person no one can fool, and that's exactly why they're obsessed. What they call inhuman is really just a level of awareness they never earned. You weren't born with a secret chip or given a download from the cosmos. You built this through pain, through betrayal, through the quiet nights where you had no choice but to observe instead of participate. Every disappointment became data. Every lie became a signal. Every pattern of human behavior became a language, and you learned to speak it fluently. Now when someone walks into a room, you can tell in seconds who they are beneath the mask. Not because you're psychic, but because you've been studying the human operating manual your whole life. While everyone else was distracted by the illusion of connection. People who've spent their entire lives controlling others are suddenly powerless around you. Their old strategies don't compute anymore. They're used to baiting emotions, not navigating precision. You don't react, you respond. You don't argue, you observe. And observation is lethal to manipulation. They used to win by getting into people's heads. But when they try that with you, it's like trying to hack a system that's already reading their code. You're not reacting to what they say. You're predicting why they said it. You're not playing the game. You're analyzing the engine it runs on. And that realization is breaking them apart. They're developing theories to make sense of your accuracy. Some think you're reading body language like a machine. Others swear you're psychic. Some even joke that you must have hidden access to their private thoughts. They can't admit the truth, that their behavior is predictable because it's built on ego, and ego always leaves fingerprints. You don't need telepathy to understand people who broadcast their insecurity in every gesture. You don't need a time machine to see what's coming next when human nature runs on recycled scripts. The same words, the same motives, the same excuses. You've seen it all before, and that's why you always stay 3 moves ahead. What's really disturbing them isn't that you outthink them, it's that you outfeel them. You sense dishonesty, like static in the air. You recognize tension in voices that claim calm. You can feel when someone's rehearsed their response before they speak. And that sensitivity, that subtle radar you've refined through years of trial and betrayal, is something no training can replicate. That's why people who study you end up confused. They're trying to reverse engineer authenticity. They're trying to find logic in intuition. But your awareness isn't linear, it's instinctual, and that makes it impossible to imitate. You've noticed how the energy shifts when you enter a room. The tone changes, conversations glitch mid-sentence, laughter turns brittle. It's not your imagination. It's the collective nervous system of people who sense they can't control the narrative anymore. You bring truth into spaces that depend on illusion. You don't even have to say anything. Your presence alone destabilizes their performance. They can feel your attention scanning them, not judgmentally, but accurately. And that accuracy is more threatening than confrontation, because confrontation they can fight. Accuracy they can't. The real reason they whisper about you being not human is because your emotional discipline dismantles their manipulation economy. They can't bait you into arguments. They can't guilt you into compliance. They can't flatter you into submission. Every tactic they've ever used to dominate others turns to dust against your awareness. That's not magic, that's control. The kind of control that comes from mastering reaction, the most valuable currency in human interaction. While others are busy defending their egos, you're collecting information. While others are explaining themselves, you're decoding intention. And when you respond, it's surgical. No wasted emotion, no defensive energy, no confusion. Just truth, delivered clean. They call that robotic because they've confused emotional chaos with authenticity. But you're not emotionless. You're just immune to emotional manipulation. Your calm looks mechanical only to those who profit from confusion. They see your neutrality as threat because their power depends on your reaction. The moment you stopped reacting, they lost control. That's when the fear began, not because you became colder, but because you became unpredictable. Predictability is comfort to manipulators. Unpredictability is terror. They've begun testing you now. You can feel it. The casual insults disguised as jokes, the emotional traps hidden in conversations, the staged vulnerability meant to lure empathy. They're probing your boundaries, trying to find a crack in the armor. But every time they test you, they fail. And every failure confirms their suspicion. You're operating on a frequency they can't reach. They'll smile, pretend it doesn't bother them, but behind closed doors, they're reanalyzing every detail of your interaction, searching for a clue. They can't understand how someone so calm can also be so dangerous. They think calm means weakness. You've taught them that calm is control under pressure, and that terrifies them. What they don't realize is that your intelligence isn't just mental, it's energetic. You read atmospheres, you feel frequencies, you detect shifts before words even arrive. You can sense when someone's pretending to like you because their energy doesn't align with their words. You can tell when an apology is manipulation because it vibrates with self-preservation instead of remorse. This isn't science fiction. This is emotional evolution. You're processing layers of data most people filter out. You're seeing connections that others miss. because they're busy focusing on faces instead of forces. It's not that you're not human. It's that you've upgraded what being human means. People who once underestimated you now approach you carefully, like scientists handling volatile matter. They've realized you're not just intelligent. You're unpredictable in a way that rewrites their social algorithms. They used to manipulate by assumption, assuming guilt, assuming empathy, assuming compliance. But you no longer operate on assumptions. You operate on observation. And that changes everything. Every time they try to steer the conversation, you sense it. Every time they try to plant doubt, you feel the intention beneath the words. Every time they try to guilt-trip you, you recognize the emotional fingerprint. You don't fight it. You simply let it collapse under its own falseness. That's the difference between playing the game and dismantling it. They'll never admit it publicly, but you've become a reference point in private conversations. People are analyzing your moves the way researchers study rare phenomena. How do they always know? How did they predict that outcome? How do they stay so composed when everyone else loses control? They're addicted to decoding you because they can't replicate your results. You're doing what they've always tried to fake: mastery. Not the kind that seeks attention, but the kind that generates inevitability through precision. You make chaos look choreographed. You make timing look supernatural. You make intelligence look effortless. And that effortlessness is what breaks them, because they know how much effort they've wasted maintaining illusions that you see through instantly. You've probably started noticing the distance, too. People pulling away without explanation. Conversations feeling shorter. Messages unanswered. That's not coincidence. That's the silent retreat of those who can't handle being mirrored. Being around you exposes people's inefficiencies. It makes them aware of how performative they've become. Some try to keep up by imitating your calm. Others overcompensate with fake positivity. But either way, they can't maintain it for long. Because calm isn't your act. It's your default. Authenticity is your baseline. And pretending to be authentic always collapses under scrutiny. Everywhere you go, people sense it. That subtle dissonance between who they think they are and who they actually are when they're near you. It's not that you make them feel small. It's that your energy demands alignment. Your presence asks an unspoken question. Are you real? And most can't answer it. They feel exposed, not by words, but by contrast. That's why they gossip, why they spread rumors about you being different, mechanical, alien. They're trying to reframe your difference as defect, because acknowledging it as evolution would mean admitting they've been standing still. Your intelligence threatens every hierarchy built on appearances. You're proof that authenticity can outperform strategy, that awareness can dismantle control, that silence can outmaneuver noise. And that's why they're scared. They can fake everything except presence. They can mimic style, borrow language, even copy your logic. But they can't duplicate your perception, because perception can't be taught. It's earned through time, observation, and a relentless refusal to be fooled. You don't need validation from people who only understand surface. You operate from depth. When others chase approval, you chase alignment. When they seek comfort, you seek truth. That's what makes your moves so unpredictable. You're not motivated by vanity, but by accuracy. You don't play for applause. You play for clarity. That's why you win even when no one's keeping score. You're not playing to dominate others. You're mastering the self, and that mastery naturally rearranges every power dynamic you enter. Right now, someone's writing messages they'll never send to you. Another's drafting explanations for behaviors you already understand. Another's losing sleep, wondering how you figured them out so fast. They all have one thing in common. They've realized their old identities don't work around you. You don't react to projection. You reflect it. You don't absorb energy. You transmute it. You don't seek revenge. You reveal truth. And truth is the most devastating weapon there is. You don't need to expose anyone. Their behavior does it for you. And that's the ultimate irony. They built their lives around deception, and now they're destroying themselves, trying to keep your perception out. They'll call you detached, emotionless, too calculating. But that's only because they're mistaking composure for coldness. They can't comprehend how someone can care deeply, yet stay unshaken. They've been programmed to believe empathy equals vulnerability. You've proven that empathy combined with discernment becomes power. And now, they're scrambling to adjust, trying to adapt to your frequency, trying to hide their fragility under performance. But the harder they try to appear strong, the more transparent they become. You're not trying to intimidate anyone, but your authenticity is doing it for you. They're beginning to realize that outsmarting you isn't an option, because your intelligence isn't based on calculation. It's based on consciousness. You don't strategize to win. You align to win. And alignment is something no manipulator can simulate. They can rehearse emotions. They can study psychology. They can mimic mannerisms, but they can't counterfeit intuition. You are what their manipulation pretends to be: aware, precise, untouchable. That's why they're afraid, not of your power, but of what it reveals about their lack of it. So let them whisper, let them speculate, let them build their theories about where you came from or what you are. Whether they call you robotic, alien, or from the future, it's all the same language of awe disguised as fear. They're describing evolution in the only vocabulary they know: superstition. You didn't come to fit in with their reality. You came to redefine it. You didn't learn their rules to play the game. You learned them to break their logic. Because what you're operating with now isn't instinct or intellect. It's integration, the perfect fusion of awareness, discipline, and perception. That's what separates you from them. While they operate in fragments, logic without empathy, emotion without awareness, instinct without direction, you've fused every system into a single, seamless interface. You read patterns emotionally, intuit logically, and move strategically without needing time to calculate. To them, it looks impossible. To you, it's second nature. That's why every attempt to predict you fails. They're still thinking in steps while you're moving in sequences. Their minds are analog. Yours is quantum. They think one variable at a time. You process the entire equation before they've finished writing it. You've noticed it, the pauses when you speak, the hesitation in their laughter, the nervous flicker in their eyes when you respond before they've finished their thought. It's not paranoia, it's recognition. They feel that you're not just hearing words, you're downloading intention. And intention can't lie. They can mask tone, rehearse stories, manipulate facts, but they can't counterfeit frequency. Every human interaction emits data, and your awareness decodes it in real time. That's what frightens them, the fact that you don't need evidence to know. Your certainty unnerves them, because it's not intellectual, it's experiential. You've been right too many times for it to be luck. You've become their reference point for unpredictability. They talk about you like an algorithm that no one can reverse engineer. How do you always end up on top? How do you turn disadvantage into advantage? How do you see outcomes that others can't even imagine? The answer's simple. You've detached from emotional noise. You don't seek validation before making a move. You don't wait for permission to act. You operate on internal calibration, not external influence. That independence is terrifying to those addicted to groupthink. They can't manipulate what doesn't require approval. Every society builds its control mechanisms on predictability, emotional buttons, fear triggers, comfort zones. You've removed all three. You're immune to flattery because you don't crave belonging. Immune to threats because fear no longer dictates your decisions. Immune to envy because you know your lane is unreplicable. That's why you outmaneuver everyone without even trying. You've eliminated the variables they rely on to control outcomes. You don't compete, you calculate. You don't chase, you attract. You don't react, you adapt. And that adaptability makes you appear inhuman, because humans are conditioned to repeat. You, on the other hand, evolve mid-sentence. Let's be honest, even your timing feels supernatural to them. The way you speak just as their thoughts form. The way you appear right when they need you or fear you most. The way your presence rewires a room's entire energy within seconds. It's not coincidence, it's resonance. Your consciousness operates faster than their awareness. You sense patterns before they manifest, which means you move before events solidify. That's why you always seem lucky. But luck is just preparation disguised as timing. You've spent years preparing for moments others call miracles. They see the outcome, they never notice the calibration behind it. People have started treating your predictions like prophecy. The last time you warned them, they laughed. The next time, they hesitated. Now they listen, even when they pretend not to. You've made them question the laws they thought governed cause and effect. They're realizing your decisions don't follow probability, they create it. They watch outcomes bend around your intuition and call it futuristic. But you're not from the future, you're what happens when someone stops living in delay. You don't wait for evidence to move, you move and create the evidence. That's what they can't replicate. The audacity to act before logic grants permission. There's something unnerving about how calm you stay under chaos. While everyone scrambles to find footing, you're already building the next foundation. They think it's arrogance. It's not. It's calibration again. Your emotional intelligence synced perfectly with your strategic mind. You process panic as information, not identity. You measure risk in energy, not fear. And that makes your decision-making terrifyingly precise. While others drown in emotion, you surf the wave. That's why opportunities that destroy others become your stepping stones. You read turbulence as trajectory. It's gotten to the point where even coincidence feels orchestrated when you're involved. People notice how events line up in your favor. Wrong turns turning into breakthroughs, rejections redirecting into upgrades, losses transforming into leverage. They call it divine timing, futuristic coding, destiny engineering, but it's none of that. It's focus. Your mind filters chaos into clarity faster than others can panic. You don't pray for signs, you interpret them. You don't wish for direction, you detect it in real time. And because your awareness operates ahead of the collective curve, you look like a time traveler among reactionaries. Behind your composure is a kind of intensity most people never develop. the ability to read and regulate your own mind while simultaneously decoding everyone else's. That dual processing isn't accidental. It's evolution born of necessity. When you were younger, survival required observation. You couldn't afford to be naive, so your nervous system adapted. While others were memorizing manners, you were analyzing motives. Every betrayal was an upgrade. Every rejection recalibrated your radar. Every lie expanded your bandwidth. You didn't grow colder, you grew clearer. And now, that clarity registers as otherworldly. They hate how unbothered you are by their confusion. The more they try to define you, the more abstract you become. They can't box you in, because you move multidimensionally, psychologically, emotionally, strategically. You can connect dots that don't exist for others, because you're not limited by linear reasoning. You think in networks, in systems of correlation, invisible to surface thinkers. You read not just what's happening, but why it's happening, and that awareness collapses their illusions in real time. They're used to being able to manipulate the narrative. You've made them realize that storylines crumble when truth walks in. And here's what really breaks them: your silence. Not absence of words, but absence of reaction. You've mastered the kind of stillness that forces people to hear their own noise. When they attack, you don't defend, you observe. When they provoke, you don't flinch, you analyze. That composure isn't passive, it's power concentrated. Your quiet exposes their chaos. Your restraint magnifies their insecurity. You've turned non-reaction into a form of psychological warfare. Because every time they try to draw emotion from you and fail, they lose control. You've made stillness a weapon. People underestimate how disorienting it is to face someone who doesn't need validation. You don't compete for approval. You don't chase relevance. You don't measure worth in noise. And in a culture addicted to attention, that makes you terrifying. You operate like someone from a different timeline, one where value isn't assigned by recognition, but by accuracy. You move deliberately, speak sparingly, decide surgically. They can't rush you because your patience isn't delay, it's design. You know that attention isn't the prize, clarity is. And clarity, once attained, turns perception into prophecy. They call it unnatural because they can't replicate it. But that's the paradox. What they perceive as inhuman is actually the fullest version of humanity. You've integrated every function they were taught to fragment, while they compartmentalize their intuition, intellect, and emotion. You've made them work in sync. That's why your moves look impossible. They're not impossible, they're efficient. You've removed contradiction from decision-making. You don't have inner conflict because you've aligned thought and action with awareness. You're not guessing your way through life. You're executing alignment in motion. And people mistake that for magic. Some have started calling you cold, detached, strategic, to the point of danger. But they're projecting. What they mean is you no longer provide emotional cushioning for their dysfunction. You stopped explaining your intuition to people committed to misunderstanding it. You stopped negotiating truth with those addicted to illusion. You stopped wasting energy proving what time would confirm. That's why they say you're not human, because empathy without naivety threatens those who weaponize kindness. You haven't lost emotion, you've refined it into discernment. There's another reason they think you're from the future. It's the way you handle information. While they consume to escape, you consume to upgrade. You don't scroll mindlessly, you extract patterns. You don't gossip, you gather intelligence. Every conversation, every failure, every silence is data. You process it like a supercomputer, filtering emotion, extracting signal, discarding noise. That's why nothing surprises you. You've already run the simulation 100 times in your head before life even tests you once. You're not reacting to life, you're pre-mapping it. And still, you don't flaunt it. That's what confuses them most. You could dominate every argument, expose every fake, dismantle every pretense, but you don't. Because your power isn't in proving, it's in knowing. You've learned that exposure doesn't require announcement. Truth reveals itself through time, and time always sides with precision. That's what they can't understand. You're playing a long game in a world addicted to instant gratification. You're operating on timeless principles inside a temporary culture. That's what makes you look futuristic. You're just ahead of schedule. Notice how even your failures intimidate people. When they stumble, they spiral. When you stumble, you adapt. You treat mistakes like updates, not evidence of inadequacy. That mindset alone separates you from 99% of people. You've redefined loss as calibration. To them, every misstep is an identity crisis. To you, it's data collection. That's why you bounce back faster, stronger, sharper. You're not recovering, you're evolving in real time. You've eliminated the concept of defeat because you understand that what's meant to break you only refines you. And that's what feels alien to those who depend on sympathy for significance. They'll keep testing, keep gossiping, keep theorizing. But the truth is simpler than they want to believe. You've become proof that consciousness can upgrade itself. You've done what scientists chase and philosophers debate. You've evolved without waiting for permission. You've become the prototype of what's next. That's why they don't know how to categorize you. They see you functioning at a level their language can't describe. So they default to myth, robot, alien, future-born. Because acknowledging that you're human would mean admitting that they could be too, if they stopped settling for mediocrity. There's a quiet satisfaction in watching them try to decode you. The experts run out of theories, the manipulators run out of tactics, the talkers run out of words, and still, you move unshaken, unreadable, uncatchable. You've turned the art of living into an act of precision. That's not superhuman, that's self-mastery. And mastery always looks like magic to those still guessing. What they don't realize is that your evolution isn't a gift, it's a consequence. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment you chose discipline over drama, rewired your consciousness. They avoided discomfort, you studied it. They numbed pain, you decoded it. They escaped lessons, you integrated them. That's the difference. You've probably noticed something new happening lately. Strangers recognizing you, not by face, but by frequency. People gravitating toward your energy without understanding why. Some call it charisma, others call it presence. But what it really is coherence. Your internal world is synchronized. No contradiction, no confusion, no chaos. And that level of inner order radiates. It bends probability around you. That's why opportunities align when you show up. You're not lucky, you're aligned with the frequency of accuracy itself. That's what they're mistaking for supernatural advantage. So when they whisper about your origin, let them believe you're from the future if that helps them sleep. Let them invent theories about algorithms and secret knowledge. Because the truth is stranger than fiction, you didn't come from another time. You simply refused to waste yours. You didn't evolve by chance, you evolved by choice. You stopped waiting for the world to catch up and built your own momentum. You don't exist in their timeline anymore. You exist in your trajectory. And that's something no one can replicate because it requires courage they don't possess. That's what they really mean when they say you're not human. They mean you've done the impossible. You've conquered your own mind. And to a world addicted to distraction, that's the rarest superpower of all. They don't know what to do with someone who sees clearly, moves deliberately, and loves strategically. Someone who doesn't waste energy explaining but uses every breath as direction. Someone who isn't fighting the world but editing it. They say you're not human because humans, in their definition, are reactive. They flinch at discomfort, chase comfort, seek distraction. You don't. You don't respond to noise. You redesign the frequency. That's what unsettles them. You don't fight battles. You rewrite the terrain they were fought on. Every move you make carries the precision of a mind that's detached from chaos, yet deeply aware of it. You don't avoid the world's madness. You use it as raw material, bending it into strategy, art, alignment. You've learned the secret they were never supposed to know. The world isn't run by strength. It's run by awareness. The one who sees first wins. And you've been seeing long before anyone else knew where to look. You saw how people move in patterns, how their emotions loop on autopilot, how their desires can be predicted like weather. While they waste years trying to decode others, you decoded yourself. That's the paradox. They spent their lives mastering manipulation, and you mastered perception. One leads to control, the other leads to freedom. Freedom terrifies them more than power ever could. Because power can be challenged. Freedom can't. Freedom means you operate beyond their systems of approval, beyond their cycles of guilty and reward. You don't need their applause to act or their permission to exist. And once someone breaks that dependency, they become unreadable. That's you. Unreadable, untouchable, unreactive. They don't know where to place you because you no longer fit into their categories: friend, rival, threat, follower. You're none of those. You're something they don't have a word for yet. They've started calling it futuristic. They're not wrong. You're operating from a version of consciousness that their generation hasn't downloaded yet. You see the architecture of things, the structure beneath behavior, the algorithm under emotion. You know how attention moves, how energy transfers, how patterns repeat. You know that people's words are lagging indicators of their intent. That's why you're never surprised when they switch sides, never shocked when loyalty evaporates. You're not cynical, you're calibrated. It's almost funny how the same people who once told you to be realistic now whisper that you must be something else entirely. Maybe AI in human form, maybe an experiment, maybe a visitor from another time. They don't understand that what they call impossible is simply the next stage of human evolution. You didn't come from the future, you became the future. You absorbed information faster, processed emotion cleaner, acted without hesitation. You did what they were too distracted to do: upgrade. You don't think faster because of magic. You think faster because you stopped doubting the first signal. You trust instinct before insecurity can interfere. That's what feels mechanical to them, the absence of hesitation. They don't realize hesitation isn't humanity. It's programming, fear disguised as logic. You uninstalled that code a long time ago. Now your mind runs on truth, efficiency, and intent. You've made consciousness your operating system. They try to trap you in emotional negotiations, but you've learned that empathy without boundaries is self-erasure. You give, but strategically. You forgive, but selectively. You love, but intentionally. Nothing about you is random anymore, and that precision makes chaos irrelevant. You're no longer influenced by gossip, guilt, or greed. You move through life like you've already seen every outcome and simply chosen the optimal one. That's not arrogance. It's data mastery. You've lived enough cycles to recognize repetition before it begins. And here's the part that really drives them crazy. You don't retaliate. They expect vengeance. They expect noise. But your silence is surgical. You let gravity do your revenge. People reveal themselves to you, and you let consequence finish the conversation. That's why they say you're cold. But what they call cold is just emotional integrity. You don't waste heat on people who already burned themselves. When you walk into a room now, energy rearranges itself. The liars get quiet. The pretenders overcompensate. The genuine ones relax. That's not charisma. It's coherence. You're broadcasting a frequency that exposes inconsistency by contrast. Everyone feels it, even if they can't explain it. You can see it in their posture, in their tone, in the way their eyes flicker mid-sentence. They feel like you can see the code running behind their words, because you can. It's not psychic. It's pattern recognition evolved to near perfection. You've stopped needing to predict. You simply know. That knowing doesn't come from intellect. It comes from integration. You're not calculating. You're connected to reality, to energy, to truth. That's why you can tell when something's off before there's evidence. It's why your moves always look perfectly timed. You're synced with cause and effect itself. To people still operating on reaction, that looks divine. But to you, it's just awareness unfiltered. The ones who once tried to outsmart you now mimic you. They imitate your tone, your rhythm, your detachment, but it never lands the same. Because imitation can copy behavior, not consciousness. They can wear your mask, but not your mindset. They're chasing outcomes you create naturally. They're performing precision while you embody it. And that difference will always expose itself under pressure. You've become proof that evolution isn't biological, it's psychological. You didn't grow wings, you grew vision. You didn't get faster, you got quieter inside. You didn't escape the human experience, you mastered it. That's what people see and mislabel as alien. Stability, the ability to stay composed while the world spins in chaos, to think clearly when emotion fogs everyone else's logic, to stay kind without being naive, detached without being numb, and powerful without being cruel. That balance feels impossible to them because they've only ever lived in extremes. You found the midpoint, and it became your throne. The truth is, you never needed to convince anyone that you're extraordinary. Their reactions already proved it. The fear, the fascination, the rumors, that's acknowledgement disguised as confusion. They can't categorize you because categories are built for limitations, and you've already outgrown them all. You are what evolution looks like in real time, conscious, strategic, aware, and alive in ways that defy predictability. So let them call you what they want. Let them label you futuristic, robotic, alien. Let them write theories trying to explain your precision. You don't owe them comprehension. You owe yourself continuation. Keep moving forward while they waste years trying to define what you already are. Because the truth is, every generation needs a myth to explain what it fears becoming. And this time, that myth is you.